host broadcaster of the G20 South Africa 2025.
You would have heard us talk about how the economy, according to the finance track, for example, has shown resilience in the face of a multiplicity of challenges. And the ministers of finance, the Minister of International Relations, joining us in studio to talk about this declaration, Unati. And it speaks to a myriad of issues, right, that also are speaking to the world today and some of the challenges.
And it's very interesting that you're talking about the finance issues. I mean, we hear a lot of analysts talking about green shoots around this time, speaking also about South Africa coming off the grey listing. So all of this happening also amid geopolitical, issues and challenges. But South Africa has successfully, as we've been hearing from world leaders, been able to execute this G20 presidency. And as you've said, Bongiwe, we are now joined in studio by the Finance Minister, Enoch, Godongwana, as well as the Minister for DIRCO, Ronald, Lamola. Gentlemen, very good afternoon to you both.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Let me start with you, Minister Godongwana. I see behind me the flags are gone, right? And it means the business of the day has been concluded. But for you, it's been a grueling time to get to this point. Let's just speak about the journey to this moment.
Look, as you are aware, the G20 is something that rotates. But a G20 of this magnitude started in 2008 with the Americans, where you bring in a Leaders Summit. And it's therefore to bring in leaders in the given stature of a different method. So we've been working very hard. You can see how this venue looks like in order to sell the country to the world. And I think we've done that effectively. This conference is not only about these leaders talking here, is about selling South Africa to the world. And that's exactly what we've done successfully with this event.
For you, Minister?
Yeah, indeed, it has been a grilling year, but it was also exciting. Seeing all the foreign guests coming to the various meetings, tourism, working group, trade, finance, ours. It was exciting. Most of them enjoyed. They told me about the beauty of the country. From Cape Town, Durban, Hluhluwe, Table Mountain, Pilanesberg, Sun City, the Kruger National Park, they really enjoyed this country. But let me tell you a secret. They enjoyed the biltong the most. And that's why it was part of the package for the leaders lounge. Because all their ministers have told the heads of state that there's a meeting in South Africa called biltong. Please don't go home without eating that.
Now it explains why that foreign journalist kept asking me, where's the meat? I didn't understand what he's talking about. Now I get it.
Minister Godongwana, I mean, having listened to the Minister of Tourism early on with one of my colleagues talking about just the benefits of tourism for this country, that in fact they are not just stabilized in that sector, they're actually growing. And when you look at the numbers coming particularly from the US, surpassing the UK, which is quite interesting, I mean, if you look at the dynamics. But let's talk then about just the benefits and the positivity that came out of this, amidst, of course, the crucial engagements around trade and around all of these key 4 priorities that South Africa has been engaging on.
Look, I mean, if you ask me, this G20, South Africa has put its own footprint. We've made decisions here in this G20 which will live beyond South Africa's presidency, whose benefit will accrue not only to South Africa but the whole of the African continent. So in that sense, we've made an impact. But coming to South Africa, we've been enjoying a positive week of grey listing, medium-term budget policy, the upgrade from Standard & Poor. We now have this bonus, which all of these things which face South Africa global. Virtually no country in the world is not looking at South Africa today. That's one thing. And therefore, even tourism has become a critical component of that. If, as Minister Lamola is saying, we have taken these people deliberately across the country in order for people to test how the country looks like.
Now, Minister Lamola, I'll get to you in just a moment. I want to stay with that, Minister, because you and I have had countless conversations around what transformation looks like in the economy, right? And some of the conversations we've been having here that looks at the different documents and the ministerial documents leading up to this point are that if we are to see a transformed economy, it should look like an economy that benefits Africa as a whole, especially when it comes to the issue of debt, right? The president speaks about the borrowers forum. That is important as well. But then again, an ordinary South African who starts a business right now, who says, may I not have to sell my IP because a bank is not going to support me, or I will struggle to find funders and backers, which might lead me to effectively selling what I own.
Let me just say, one of the weaknesses of the South African financial sector is the absence of what we call venture capital, which funds up emerging institutions. We are discussing amongst ourselves in government that that's a gap we need to close in such a manner that venture capital becomes an important aspect to help emerging business in South Africa. And I think we're not running short of. I mean, somebody was making a point and attending a Standard & Poor side event here. And one of the executives of Standard & Poor said, South Africa has got enough savings. We're not running short of, even the African continent, we're not running short of savings. He mentioned that the African continent have got $2.8 trillion US savings, which can be translated deployed into helping the South African economy. It's something we're working hard to achieve.
Absolutely. Minister, we do know you are pressed for time. Maybe also, as we engage quickly with Mr. Lamola, we'll get your, just your final thoughts very quickly. Minister Lamola, let me come back to you very quickly before we say goodbye to Mr. Godongwana. In terms of next steps, I mean, you've held this successful G20 presidency, as we've been hearing from the world leaders. What are the next steps in terms of, we know that you have presented the recommendations from the G20 at 20 review, but also there's the handover that still has to happen officially to the US.
Yeah, the handover is ceremonial.
Yes.
By the 1st of December, the G20 goes to the US. They are the next president. But we have said we remain open if they want any form of handover from DERCO. We will definitely hand over the appropriate equivalent official, because there are some logistics that needs to be handed over. For example, the G20 official website has to be handed over officially from DERCO to the next country that is going to host the G20, the domain. There is a need for that conversation. There are some other logistical aspects that still there is a need for that conversation, but we leave it up to the US in terms of how. We have sent them communique to confirm that we remain available to assist with all the processes so that it's a smooth transition.
Now, before we even go to our colleague Kylie Thekumalu, Minister Godongwana, there is another issue that keeps coming up in the conversations, but also it's in the documents as one was reading. When you look at the issues of trade, there is the big push by the continent for the African Free Trade Continental Area. Yes, a lot of people agree we need it. But you still have small businesses who say, if it comes in, the issues of infrastructure, at land ports, for example, let's not have some of the countries that are struggling with roads, and some are struggling with queues at some of our borders. We've seen that at some of the borders, but it looks like things are improving. There's also the issue they're raising of protectionism as far as the countries are concerned. So how then do you move forward as a continent to remove those bottlenecks so we begin to see a boost of trade within the African countries?
Okay, let me just say one of the agenda items and resolution of the finance track. One of the agenda items and the resolution of the finance track is moving on infrastructure, particularly cross-border infrastructure was a critical item agreed to within the G20. And therefore, if you put that as a point and you also link it with the agreement, again, in the G20, in the finance track of engagement with Africa, with the sole purpose of promoting investment on the African continent. Those are institutions that are going to go beyond our presidency. We are going to give effect to that. So for the free trade era to operate effectively, we need trade facilitation infrastructure. Let me just give an example which we need to sort out.
Yeah.
Do you know there's a road line from DRC to South Africa? Right? That rail line has got a problem because in each country has got to run its own. When it comes from DRC, it comes to Zambia, Zambia must take over. When it comes to Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe. When it comes to Beit Bridge, we must take over. It's an inefficient way of doing it. And we've got to find a way between those four countries of just making sure that line is concessioned to somebody who's going to run it from DRC to South Africa to make that infrastructure work. Those are concrete things we need to be doing.
Minister Lamola, I want to end with you as we wrap our conversation. I mean, with all that's been said and done, let's talk a little bit about just global diplomacy. I mean, how do you see this entire event and process that we've seen from Indonesia, in fact, all to South Africa in terms of the global south? How do you see this reshaping just the global governance landscape going forward? Because a lot of the conversations that you've been hearing during even the plenary sessions is how South Africa has been African-led and African-forward.
Yeah, is that the global leaders are affirming multilateral institutions. I mean, as we were adopting the G20 declaration yesterday here in South Africa, in Brazil yesterday, they adopted the declaration for the COP30, which is an affirmation of the work of multilateral institutions that have served us well since the Second World War. And we were deliberate, as Madiba has said, that when we host the G20, we are going to shine the spotlight on the African continent. And we were deliberate. The critical minerals framework is there. It's clear value addition at source. We've got 80% of that critical minerals. Artificial intelligence, that the African continent should not just be a consumer in terms of artificial intelligence, but we must be the innovation at the research level, data centers. That declaration speaks about that. The issues related to climate change and so forth. So this has definitely revolutionized how the world sees the continent of Africa as a partnership, an investment destination. We did not come in with a begging bowl. We said we have got resources. Yeah. We just need to partner, to work together, to make it work for all of us. Because with these resources, you can process them here in South Africa or in the DRC and so forth, and still sell them to India, to Europe, and so forth. That is the outcome that we believe has revolutionized this continent.
And as someone has said, Africa must seize the moment. Minister, thank you so much for that, and also to you both, Minister.
Slight change of plan.
Oh.
We're going to let Minister Godongwana go. The story we're going to need a response from you, Minister Lamola. I'm going to ask you to please bear with us just for a couple of more minutes. Mr. Godongwana, I know that you have to leave us.